The Cleveland Browns, America's franchise, the greatest club in the history of the NFL. They win year. No, I'm just kidding. None of that stuff happens. They suck. They're terrible. They're not good at anything. Will Brinson, Ryan Wilson, John Breech, here to give you the needs of the Browns this offseason. They haven't hired a head coach yet, so it's a little hard to figure out exactly what direction they're going in. The Browns, through national reporters, decided to take pot shots at the Panthers and Giants for rushing to hire their head coaches before completing their interviews. Congratulations, Cleveland. You did something wrong again. Now they're going to take their time. They're going to let the process play out. Maybe Kevin Stefanski's a target. Maybe Josh McDaniels is a guy they go after. Lots of choices in Cleveland. TBD on what can happen. But we do know that they need help. On offensive line, it's very easy to distinguish where they need help because they have Baker Mayfield, the quarterback. They have Nick Chubb, the running back. They have Odell Beckham, the wide receiver. Jarvis Landry, David Njoku. All those things are great. If those things are great, how was it so terrible last year, John?
Brinson, that is a great question. They had so many weapons, but this is like driving a tank, but you don't have the wheels, so the tank can't actually move and really do anything or be effective. And what they need to do is beef up the offensive line. I mean, this team was just crushed. We saw Joe Thomas retire a couple years ago. They traded away Kevin Zeitler. And I know it was ultimately to land Odell Beckham, but maybe they're regretting that now. I don't know. They fired John Dorsey. So, yes, offensive line needs to be what the Browns focus on this offseason. I think that's it. You go into free agency, you say, how can we get better on the offensive line? You go in the draft, you say, how can we get better on the offensive line? You don't even pay attention to any other offensive positions. You're pretty set at receiver. You're pretty set at tight end. You have Nick Chubb at running back. It is all about the offensive line this season, how you make that position group better.
The fact that John's just pointing to the offensive line tells you how terribly a job Freddie Kitchens did managing this team, because if you line up these rosters, the Browns have the best roster in the AFC North. The Browns are currently sitting at home with the Bengals and the Steelers, where the Ravens are still playing. So, yes, fix the offensive line. Greg Robinson, his contract's up. Chris Hubbard, who they signed to a big money deal, has not played well at right tackle. So here's what you do. You draft one. Again, here we go with the Tristan Wirfs out of Iowa is a guy who seems to fit every need they have. He can play right tackle or left tackle. He is a monster. Josh Jones out of Houston, who's had a really good season. He's huge at 6'7". He's a little more athletic than Tristan Wirfs, a little more slender, if you will, as an offensive lineman. And then Austin Jackson's another guy who has been had a sort of a resurgent season, gotten on people's radars with his athleticism at left tackle. So those are three guys that immediately fix two of your biggest problems, and maybe you just keep drafting offensive linemen until you get it right, because if you can keep Baker Mayfield upright, that to me would solve a lot of the issues that face this team in 2019.
Defensively, not exactly the most sturdy ship on the water, although they got a lot of nice pieces. Myles Garrett, of course, the former #1 overall pick. He is a guy who can do stuff and things. What else do you see in this defensive side of the ball that they need to fix, John Breech?
Yeah, I think the one thing that would probably surprise most people about the Browns is that they had a lot of trouble stopping the run. So, yeah, you had Myles Garrett out there rushing the passer when he wasn't suspended. And so they did that pretty well, but you need to beef up the interior of the defensive line. So I think they'll probably, and that's something you can usually do on the cheap. You're not going to go broke in free agency trying to add guys, or you can get them in the back end of the draft. You don't need to waste a first or second round pick trying to beef up the interior defensive line. And the other thing they need to do is figure out what they're going to do at safety, because you have Demarius Randall. He's going to be a free agent. You have Burris is going to be a free agent. So you need to figure out who you want to re-sign. And that's not just at that position. You have a couple of linebackers where the Browns are going to have to make some key decisions. They've got to decide what they want to do with Christian Kirksey, who absolutely just hasn't been able to stay healthy. And then you also have Joe Schobert, who is going to be a free agent. And I think he's a key player on that defense, and they need to look to re-sign him. So whatever coach gets hired is going to have a lot of question marks on defense. We mentioned really on offense, it's just the offensive line, but there are three position groups that they are going to have to get figured out right away as soon as they get that coaching job. Questions they're going to have to answer on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, John's right. But again, if you look at that roster on the defensive side, there are a lot of playmakers, and you just wonder just how it doesn't come together. But we'll start with the defensive line. As Breech mentioned, Derek Brown is the best defensive lineman in this class. He's like a top 5 guy. So unless the Browns trade up, they're not going to get him. Someone they could land, however, Javon Kinlaw in the middle of the round. Like I said before, he is the best pass rusher interior lineman in this draft class. Again, pair him with Myles Garrett to his right or left, and that immediately makes things a lot more difficult for the other teams in the AFC North. And then Breech also mentioned the secondary, specifically safety. We don't know what's going on with Demarius Randall. And they have guys they can target like Grant Delpit out of LSU. Really good player, really athletic player. He has struggled with an ankle injury in tackling, so obviously he needs to improve on those things, but he is special when he is on. Xavier McKinney out of Alabama is another guy that I like a lot. Going to be a first-round talent based on how things go in the pre-draft season. And finally, Ashton Davis, former track star out of Cal, who played in the Pac-12, so a lot of people didn't know about him, but also a really good, really athletic center fielder who, again, could come in and contribute to the Browns secondary and upgrade what we saw last year when that team should have won 8, 9, 10 games, and they did not.
Hey, maybe they'll find a coach. Maybe they'll win some games. Or, hear me out, or maybe the Cleveland Browns will stink again in 2020. I'm not falling for it this offseason, Cleveland. Prove it to me, then we can hype you up.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.